Coming up on this edition of Rev Culture, looking to the future. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Rev Culture. I'm Todd Lewis. Coming up on the program, we'll meet a couple of young racers. Marie-Soleil-Labelle is participating in the Nissan Sentra Cup this year, and Mayor Deonarine is tearing it up in Radical Cup North America. We'll also have a conversation with Anne Roy, who is a longtime motorsports executive working hard to get more women involved in motorsports. But first up, he's in charge of NASCAR International, Chad Seigler. Vice President at NASCAR Chad Seigler likes to come and visit the international events. This is not the first time that you have been to Trois-Rivières. What do you find unique about this place, and what's special about it?
No, you're right. This is my fourth time here. I love this trip. It's one of the trips that when I look at what we do internationally in Canada and Brazil, Mexico and Europe, this one's always on my list. I love it. I think what makes this place special is, you know, outside of the racing and what you'll see with the fan base, like I tell people, you can feel it when you get into this market. The minute you come into town, you can tell this is not just about a race. It's about a week-long festival of events and activity. You go through downtown, you see the fans, and then when you do come to the racetrack, same thing, you see it. You see the traffic coming in, you see the excitement, you see a packed bleachers, and then you see some really great racing.
We always try to learn from other events. What does NASCAR learn from Trois-Rivières, NASCAR Canada, that they might be able to use at other international series? It's hard to compare apples and oranges. Everything's a little bit different.
No, it is, but you're right. You can learn something from each, right? And I think the biggest thing that we talk about and we showcase is what we just discussed about how the market embraces this. I mean, what the event and what Dom and his team do here, you can tell that this is not about putting on a race. This is a year-long promotion of an event, and then the whole weekend. So when we talk and showcase what they do here on a weekend to our other partners around the world, we talk about that. It is an event, and the community's involved. And you can tell the community they feel ownership in this event, whether it's one of the local hotels or whether it's a local restaurant downtown or the venue itself, there's ownership. So that's the big thing we tell people. And I use people, we've had some of our executives come up in the past, but one thing I tell people, this is one of the events that if I can invite people, and honestly, in some situations, it's people that's not even part of our international efforts, just come see it. Come see it. And then the racing is, I mean, it's second to none. We see it with some of the stuff we do in the U.S. with some of our streaming and things like that. You see, but outside of the NASCAR Cup Series, the NASCAR Canada Series is regularly discussed in the U.S. through media and on social media and through our streaming numbers. So it's with everything I mentioned, also the racing is really, really good.
Always a plus. You mentioned that NASCAR is involved in a number of different international initiatives. What is special about Canada in that you have an ownership stake, and it seems as though you've been invested for not just a long time, but deeply invested?
Yeah, it's one of our longest invested properties. We've been invested since 06, 07, and there was also obviously a history of the sport prior to that with CASCAR, which we are very, recognize and appreciate what they did to get us here, right? So I think that has been really critical. And then there's a lot of similarities, obviously, already with the way the business operates in the U.S. So there's some natural back and forth learnings you can do there. And then it's just the market itself is really important to us, whether that's from the broadcast side, whether from the partner side, whether the commercial side, the driver development side. We talk about international really in kind of three what I'd call bullet points. The first one is having that local series that people in Canada can look at and say, this is my local driver. This is my local hero. My happiest day is if someone says, you ask someone, who's your favorite NASCAR driver, and they tell you a NASCAR Canada driver, because that means we're doing what we're supposed to do on building this sport. With that said, you have a second bullet point where if you have that driver that says, my dream is to go race in the U.S., let's provide them a path. And what we've shown with the NASCAR Canada Series is you can make that step from the NASCAR Canada Series to the U.S. and you're prepared, you're ready. The competition and what we do here is so close and so strong that it really shortens that jump. And then the third is obviously you start to look into your national series that we have in the U.S. and what do you do with those to grow the brand? Because as strong as our international series are, you do have these large series in the U.S. that can just amplify and get that growth faster.
All right, since you brought it up, the international events are coming. So what is the status? It's been speculated and talked about for a long time, whether it's Cup Series or whether it's one of the other series coming back.
Yeah, I think it can be a little of all, right? No schedule announcements today, but, if you look at what we've done, we have raced, obviously, the Xfinity Series in Montreal for 3 to 4 years, which was super successful. We've raced our NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, has raced at CTMP for several years, right up until COVID. Same thing, really solid numbers, solid car counts, solid crowd. We've had success taking the Xfinity Series to Mexico. And what we tell people, and I say this, is it's not a matter of if we're going to do it. It's just a matter of when are we going to do it. And, Daytona alone this year, we entertained people from 7 different countries looking at opportunities. For us, obviously, a market that we're already heavily invested in is important. The other thing we tell people, though, is, I think you and I were discussing this earlier, go back and look 5 years ago. The story of how we go race, take our product outside the U.S. is different than what it would be today. And, as over the last 5 years, we've raced the Cup Series on a dirt track in Bristol. We've raced on a traditional oval all across the U.S. We've raced on purpose-built road courses. We've now raced in Chicago on a street course, which we've shown we can do in the rain. We've shown we can race on an oval in the rain. And then we've turned an American football stadium into a venue. So I think what's positive about that is, even though there's these really strong facilities in Canada that you could possibly race at, we're not limited to just those facilities. We can look at different opportunities.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Well, I want to put people in sport, right? And I want to make it more diverse. I want to grow motorsport.
Mayor Deonarine began his racing career at age 9. This season, he's moved from karts to cars and is very quickly making a name for himself in Radical Cup North America. He swept the weekend, winning all 3 races at the Ontario Honda dealers' Toronto Indy. He also became the youngest winner in series history. Mayor, did you expect to have this kind of success in your first season of Radical Cup racing?
No, I didn't expect it to go this far, right? And I started this year out in Sebring, started with some testing. I went through the testing. I found I was pretty good in the radicals. Some people were noticing me. So we decided to do the first race. We went out, I did the first race. I finished on the podium in all 3 races. So third, and second, which surprised me a lot, especially being 14 years old, moving up to the Radical Series and being the youngest driver ever was accomplishment at then, right? And then I got to the opportunity to go to Road America. I was so happy I got to go. It was the best track I've ever been to. It was so fun. The racing there was amazing, right? And the rain in one of the practice sessions and one of the race sessions was I can't even explain it. It was the best racing experience I've ever had in my life. And I ended up getting a win there, which was really good for my career. And then, I ended up going to the Toronto Indy, where it was a stunning surprise, right? I went into the weekend. I wanted to do a clean sweep because I had that first win at Road America, and I knew that if I put in enough effort, I'd be able to do it. And I pushed and I ended up doing it, so it was amazing.
How gratifying was it to do in front of your family and friends, too?
It was amazing, right? And to be in front of my grandparents on their 50th anniversary and spend a day with them, and to be able to get race 2 win for them was an amazing experience.
Let's go back to the beginning of your career for a second. How did you get involved with karting? Was it watching racing? Was it trying karts? And what consumed you about motorsports?
Well, I got into it at 9 years old, like you said. One of my friends invited me out to a local karting track up in Uxbridge. I went out there. I turned out to be pretty good. So the owner of the track told me, let's put you in a faster kart. So I went in that faster kart. I think I got about 3 laps in. I'm doing roughly 60 kilometers an hour. And my dad comes out on track, like screaming, yelling, "No, this is not happening. This is way, way too fast." And now I'm racing on the streets of Toronto at over 220 kilometers an hour. So the progression from 9 years old to 15 years old is massive, and the work and effort I had to put in was incredible. It was insane.
There's always the talk about the business part of motorsports. You have a good grasp of that, and I think you maybe have a better understanding of that than many. That partners are required, and it's a challenge and a fight for you to get to every event, isn't it?
Well, sponsorship is the hardest thing, right? Motorsports is 80% of what you do off the track to prepare you for the 20%, which is on track. That 20% is the funnest time you will ever have because you're in the car, you're with fans. But that other 80% is the grind. And there's so much work and effort, not just finding sponsors, but training. Training and finding sponsors is, I would say, that it's the hardest thing about motorsports. Driving is something you can master, but you'll never ever master the art of finding sponsors. And nobody will. It's the hardest thing about sports.
You're also racing GB4 in Europe this year. So how has that experience been?
It was amazing. The opportunity to go over and race in England at 15 years old was incredible. And to be able to race on iconic tracks like Oulton Park, Donington, and Silverstone was just a step up from that. And to be able to do well in that series was like incredible. And that series is so amazing, especially for learning drivers like myself, and just moving up was amazing. And the opportunity is always there as long as you put in the effort. And I showed myself that I could do it, and we made it over there.
You have a couple of things that I find interesting about you. There's a determination to succeed. Lots of racers have that. You have a confidence in yourself and your talent and your ability, but it's not in an arrogant sort of way. Is that a fair description?
It is, yes. Unfortunately, well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but I come from a less fortunate background. I don't have very much money to spend on motorsports, so I know that if I'm humble, I can go much further than I expected to, right? And I don't put myself above others. I think everybody's equal, and that's what I'm trying to show here in motorsports, right? That everything should be fair for everybody, and everybody should be accepted into motorsports, and not feel like you have to be invited, but feel that you can go out to the racetrack and find something that you love, whether it's like engineering, right? There's 3 drivers on an F1 team, but there's over 1,000 engineers and mechanics. It's amazing that I want to put people in the sport, right? And I want to make it more diverse. I want to grow motorsports, and that is a big goal for myself.
That's a long journey to accomplish that, to make motorsports more accessible. Are you succeeding so far?
So far, I am succeeding. There's lots of people who have recognized what I'm doing and want to jump on board with me, and I'm so appreciative of that. And I don't know what to say. It's been an amazing journey up to this point, and I can't wait to see what's to come in the next couple of years.
You compete against accomplished racers in radicals. They've got lots more experience than you. They've got lots more funding than you. What does it take besides confidence to come out on top?
Well, at the lower levels of karting and even in car racing, you can have as much talent as you want. But once you go up through the ranks, you find that talent disappears. And the people that are working the hardest are the ones that are really succeeding and the ones that are going the furthest. And for myself, I think that I'm putting in enough effort to keep myself in motorsports. I know I need to put even more effort in if I want to make it to INDYCAR F1, just because of how much like funding you need, right? It's crazy to think about how much money is really out there. And I'm just hoping I can show people that I really want to make the sport better and push myself as far as I can.
Formula One is a huge goal. IndyCar, wherever you wind up, are you already looking ahead and making plans for next year? Do you have definite plans for next year?
Well, plans aren't 100%, right? It's very expensive, no matter what category of motorsports you go in. But I'm definitely I'm looking to move up to the USF series in 2025, which is the series just above Radicals or GB4. And funding for that starts 6 to 12 months in advance because like of how expensive it is, right? And after that, I want to progress, right? Move up through the ranks, Indy next, and then hopefully get to INDYCAR. And just alone, the work, and I can't even like emphasize how much work and effort you have to put in to get there, right? And there's people that have done it, and they've showed me that I can do it. So I'm hoping to do the same.
I don't know why there aren't more women in autosport, but I know that there needs to be.
Anwa has had a very long and successful career in motorsport. You were a trailblazer involved in motorsport before many women were. What lit the passion for you?
Wow. I mean, when I got into racing, 28 years ago, you're right, there were no women there. Took a while before people took me seriously. But when the guys figured out that I made them look good, they started paying attention. But seriously, it took me about a year and a half to get people to return my calls and to take me seriously. I had to work really hard to show that I was there to do a job and nothing else. But once I got into the sport, we were just saying a few minutes ago, once you get into racing, it gets into your veins because people in racing are passionate. And it turns into a pretty fun place to work because everybody's passionate about what they do. And I've learned so much over the past 28 years. I'm just ready to pass it on.
You've learned because you've worked with teams, you've worked with drivers, you worked with promoters,
Series.
you worked with sanctioning bodies.
Yeah.
How did that all evolve? Is it just you found a new opportunity or created a new opportunity?
I don't know, maybe a bit of both. It's funny, I think I'm the luckiest person in the world because I never had to look for a job. It always came to me. When I started all those years back, I was invited by the Atlantic Series, which was a very popular series at the time. And I was there for about 16 years, learned a whole lot. Because when you work with a series, you see what goes on in the teams, you see what goes on with the sanctioning body, you see what the officials do. You get a taste of everything. And then I went on and then I was offered to move into to become an agent for some drivers, look after them personally. And then I was asked by Formula E to put on an electric race in Montreal. And then I was asked to put on the Edmonton Indy for INDYCAR. So I got to do some events. I got to do a little bit of everything. It found me, and I worked really hard to do it because it is a lot of hard work. I mean, you don't just do it by snapping your fingers. It's a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work for a woman, too, because you got to prove yourself all the time.
You're trying to help the path of other young women now who want careers in motorsports. How do we go about doing that? How do we go about helping them and illustrating that it is for everyone?
It is. It's funny, when I got into racing, there weren't very many female racers, and then we had Danica Patrick and Catherine Legg and Simona De Silvestro, but it's still too few. I don't know why there aren't more women in autosport, but I know that there needs to be. I get calls all the time from young girls who want to know how to get into the sport. I think we need to find a way to showcase them better. When I did the Formula E in Montreal, I put the grid kids on the grid with the drivers. That was a big hit. That needs to be repeated. And I think that we need to be in touch with these girls, tell them how to do it, how to present themselves, how to speak to a potential sponsor, how to speak to a team owner. What I did when I was in the U.S. was I would bring these girls, present them to different teams, and the team mentored them, either for a weekend or for a whole season. And by the end of the season, the young girl knew what she wanted to do, and she ended up doing it. But they need to be shown these opportunities, and that's what we need to do here for the girls in Canada.
It's not just about driving or racing either. There are so many other opportunities in terms of management, in terms of engineering, which we are seeing more women follow as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the girls are just finding out that, okay, if I can't be a race car driver, maybe I can do something else, but I want to be in racing. And that's what I'm here to tell them today. and let's hope it works out.
You're also not finished yourself. What's next for you?
I was afraid you'd ask. I have a project that I'd like to present to our big race events in Canada. I think we're due for some changes, and we need a little bit of wow factor here. If there's one thing I learned when I was on the other side in the U.S., the Americans taught me how to promote, how to put in some wow factor. Of course, they have a lot more money than we do, but still, there's a way to do it. We need to put some wow factor into our events, and I want to do that.
Marie-Soleil-Labelle is competing in her first season of Nissan Sentra Cup. You started like many did, though, in go-karts even before you were a teenager. What first drew you to racing?
Yeah, so I'm not from a family racing. My parents did not race at all. It was me. We just went at the racetrack, the local track, for fun. And I asked my dad, can we go again? Can we go again? Can we go again? All the time. And at some point, one of the staff members was working there and he said, you're always there. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, I like it. So he said, well, come after hours. We're gonna wet the racetrack. We put some cone on it. I did a little test and they said, oh, we have a karting league. Are you interested to like start? And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. So that's how I started, and then I started doing karting competition on the indoor track and then outdoor, and now here I am. That's pretty much how it started.
You've gone from Micra Cup into Sentra Cup now. How are you finding your first season? This is a tough series.
Yes, it is. Obviously, it's a bigger car. The tire are bigger, but brakes are doing way more better than the Micra. When I was in the Micra, it was always like tricky corners and tricky brake zone, everything. But I really like it so far. Obviously, the car setup, we're still learning how to do the car setup, which one is better on the different racetrack, but overall, it's pretty fun.
In addition to racing, you are also a university student in engineering. How does that help you in your racing career?
Yeah, obviously off season when we're not racing, I feel like I can definitely learn more about the car, transmission, thermodynamic, material, composite, different kind of stuff. So obviously when I go back in the car, I can make links, and I was like, oh yes, I remember I learned that during my studies. So yes, I feel like the two of them is pretty much, it's pretty much good.
You also have a disability in terms of a developmental language disability. Mm-hmm. How does that impact your learning in terms of your education and also for racing?
Yeah, so my learning disability, it's a language disorder. So when I'm thinking, sometimes the words that come out are not exactly what I have in my mind. Obviously, when I'm reading, when I'm writing, sometimes it can be a little bit harder. I have less classes than a normal student. So, for example, they have six courses. I have 4. Obviously, it takes a little bit longer to have my degrees, but it doesn't matter. It's not because you have a different that you cannot succeed. And that's one thing with racing. I feel like some people are like, oh, she doesn't know how to speak properly or stuff like that, but it doesn't stop me to not be good on track and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've also become an advocate and do so much charitable and philanthropic work.
Yes. This year, in 2022, we raised $17,000 for Make-A-Wish Rêve d'Enfant Foundation to help kids achieve their biggest goal, even though they have a disease or something like that. And for me, it's really important because every time I'm on the track, off track, I always achieve my dreams. So I feel like, why not helping a kid?
Where do you see your future in racing and motorsports?
Yeah, obviously I want to handle the steering wheel as long as I can, finish my degree, and who knows, maybe IMSA, Pinties, they're pretty much cool, something like that, bigger car.
And that will do it for this edition of Rev Culture. Don't forget, you can catch up on past episodes by going to the Rev TV YouTube channel. You can also catch weekly episodes of Speed Chronicles on the Rev TV YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.